It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, where you at? Not somewhere in Idaho, something like that. Where's it we're at now?
I am in New Orleans. I am in the media
That's
center
right.
here. This is the biggest. So this is the first Super Bowl I've ever covered, but this is the biggest media area I've ever seen in my life. I kind of tried to get somewhere by myself, to get some quiet. But back to where my bag is like 4 football fields that way. And the radio row is downstairs and another 2 football fields that way. And all of this is just media. It's crazy. It's huge.
Well, okay, so you answered my question. I was wondering if where you were at was the same place as the infamous radio row that we hear so much about. So were you in that area as well?
Yeah. I spent a good amount of time there today, just kind of walking around, talking to people. So the Visit Pittsburgh people who are here for some reason, I'm not quite sure why, but they're giving out Prantle's almond tort cupcakes.
Oh,
I somehow resisted that temptation. I was very
I don't know
full.
how. Okay.
I had this breakfast. It's like crawfish and grits with eggs and bacon and potato. I was could barely walk over here from the restaurant, so I was very full. So I was like, okay, no. But maybe circle back there later this afternoon and see if there's any left.
I guess that's
check and see,
that's the key to resist is eating right beforehand. If you know you're going to
Yes.
be walking past something,
Oh,
that's
yes.
funny that they're there.
Bounty has been giving away wings because that's their ad now, and the New Orleans people have all kinds of their food and all kinds of stuff going on. So plus there's just I ran into James Harrison, I ran into Charlie Batch, ran into Max Starks. So lots of good conversations down there on Radio Row today, and also come back upstairs and do a little writing in between.
There you go. And I want to talk about the media stuff from yesterday too, getting to talk to some former Steelers or just some people with local ties that are still playing Super Bowl weekend here. But was there any conversation? You just mentioned that you had some conversations. Was there anything to pull out of any Radio Row experiences today?
Nothing significant that I feel like is sort of headline worthy. No, just shooting the crap and gathering some stuff for some stories, but nothing I feel like was breaking news or anything like that. The one thing that did happen today was there's a report out there, I guess, that the NFL is going to possibly announce the Steelers Ireland game this week. There's a press conference tomorrow that will be at, but I'm hearing that it's not going to be announced at that press conference. So.
Okay.
Doesn't mean it's not going to be announced this week, but that's not what that press conference is about. They don't usually announce those at a press conference anyway. Usually they just
pop up
have
on
a story
social
on
media.
Yeah. So.
All right. Good stuff. Well, the more things change out and the more they stay the same. Cooper Kupp, looks like his time will be done with the Los Angeles Rams. And I was just waiting. I posted yesterday when he posted his thing on social media, basically saying goodbye to LA. I was like, all right, can't wait for the betting odds to come out about his next team to see where the Steelers stand. They are the best odds to be Cooper Kupp's next team. What do we make of the fit for Cooper Kupp right now? Would be $20 million next year. However, Ian Rappaport said that, LA could eat some of that, maybe get it down to like 12 and a half or whatever it would be. What do we make of Cooper Kupp and the fit he would be? I feel like we're just rehabbing a conversation from October, but hey, here we are again.
Yeah. I just want to speak for me personally first before I talk to the Steelers. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't see it. I don't know. All of Cooper Kupp's value is tied up in 1 year. It's been a while since that 1 year. That was 2021. He hasn't played a full season since then. In fact, that's the only full season he's ever played. I think one 16-game season in 2019. He's 31, going to be 32. If it was real cheap, I'd take a shot on him. Talking about paying him $20 million, talking about trading anything significant for him, I think I'm totally out. I don't see it.
I think his time as a number one has probably passed. And I think that you saw that torch get passed to Puka Nacua in LA. And I would question the direction of the Steelers wide receiver room if you go and do something like that. And then end up trading George Pickens in a separate deal or whatever like that. If you're expecting Cooper Kupp to be like, the bona fide number one of the room, I think there's some real question about his ability to do that at this point in his career, and also the availability on top of that as well. I think he still can be like a target vacuum, if you will. Like you probably catch a ton of balls, but I don't think the big plays are still there to be had. He can move the chains for sure, so he'd be a dependable guy on third down. And he can still get his quick releases off in the red zone and stuff like that. I think he's a useful guy to have, but I would agree that I think his time as like a number one is probably done. And when you talk about the acquiring cost, the whole reason that the LA would be willing to pay some of that down, right, would be to increase the draft capital coming their way. So whether it's for a money reason or the trade capital reason with them eating the money, either way, you're either paying him more or you're giving up more of a premium asset. And I don't know that I would be interested in doing either one of those.
Well, I think it was clear his time as a number one was done when a fourth round rookie took that job from him last year.
Yeah.
That was obvious. Fifth round.
Fifth round. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I just, is he better than what the Steelers have? Yeah, I think that's I guess that's the rub, right? Is he better than is he better than Van Jefferson? Yeah, a lot. And so if you can get it cheaply, fine. And I don't think, like, I also think he's bigger than Calvin, Austin, and Roman Wilson. Cooper Kupp's 6'2". He's probably a better blocker than at least Austin is. Like, there are some things to like there. But I still think he's a player that, especially at this point in his career, is going to do most of his best work in the slot. Like, it's hard for me to see the Steelers being the team that's like, yes, we need this guy. We're willing to pay the highest price, given what they have and what they don't have at wide receiver. I don't know. I understand that Jay Glazer reported in the season that they reached out and were interested. And I get it, especially when Roman Wilson was injured. That was they didn't have necessarily a guy like that, but I don't know. I think I'm out on this idea.
Absent of the even, Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin thing, I think if I knew that, if we didn't have the questions about George Pickens and they were going to pay him, and I just felt like his long-term future was going to be here, and you could just say that he was going to be the number one and Cooper Kupp be more of that number two or a complementary piece to it, I could get more on board with it again. But like, I think, like I'm saying, if they go and get him, I almost would feel worried that that's their answer at the top of the depth chart at that position. And I don't think that it can be.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Now, if the idea is like they're going to keep Pickens and they're going to bring in somebody, maybe not like the top of the free agency market, but like someone like Christian Kirk. Okay. So like, then you're going to add Kupp to that? Okay. I can get down with that. You want him to be like a leader mentor type for George? You're going to try to take one more shot at seeing if he can prove himself worthy on and off the field of a long-term contract extension. I think a guy like Cooper Kupp makes a lot of sense in that regard. I just don't think if it's like Pickens one guy and the two young and Austin and Roman, I don't see how that works.
Let's talk about the idea of his quarterback as well, though, Matthew Stafford, because I mean, it hasn't gone this direction yet where he's putting out a statement saying goodbye to LA and everything like that. But again, I mentioned this either last week or the week before, where like Les Snead very bluntly was talking about like the timeline for a potential Matthew Stafford trade. So it seems kind of murky whether his long-term, or I shouldn't say long-term, whether his future is there. I don't know if it's like 2-3 years, whatever Matthew feels like he has left. But should that be an avenue that they explore? Because we've talked about maybe the best case scenario in a trade being like a Geno Smith, or if Geno Smith were to get cut by Seattle. But I don't know that we were talking about the idea of Matthew Stafford being in the picture. So what's your take on Matthew Stafford?
First of all, John Matthew Stafford, full government name, I feel like that's not
Actually, did not know that. Yeah.
widely known. Yeah, there you
Nope.
go. Also, feel like he's one of those guys where, like, is it Matt or Matthew? Just please pick. Like, there's a lot of both.
For some reason, I've always gone with Matthew. I feel like.
I don't know.
I don't know why.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think this is an idea I'm kind of in on. Like, not that, like, I think at this point in his career, he's like a guy that's going to get you to the Super Bowl necessarily. And if you look at the realistic options at quarterback, or even the like semi-realistic options at quarterback, he's a lot better than all of them. Like, there's nobody else even close. I don't think this is likely to happen.
No.
Because it would cost a lot. He's 37, and I don't see it making, like, if they did this, it would be they would have to make his deal a 1-year deal. The contract is funny money. It's fine. He doesn't have any guaranteed money after actually at all. I think right now, I think he has no guarantees. So, the Steelers would be getting a blank slate in terms of contract. But I would only be willing to offer like 2 years, maybe at this point. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a very win now move for a team whose owner just admitted that they do not feel closer to winning now than they were a year ago.
Right. I'm not saying that it's the same thing as Russell Wilson. I think John is it Jonathan then? Is it Jonathan Matthew Stafford?
No, John.
No, just John. Okay.
John.
All right.
John. John.
All right. Well, I might just start calling him Staff. I think Staff is obviously better than Russell Wilson at this point in both of their careers. But like the idea of what they just tried to do, they would be doing again, basically. Now, again, I think he's a better player than Russell was going into last season. But it's the one move that I feel like you could probably sell to some people as them trying to take one more shot within this window, right? Like Cam Hayward's not getting any younger. DJ still hasn't been part of a team that's won a playoff game. But I don't know, like you said, that it ultimately is going to lead them to being a Super Bowl team. And at that point, like, then I start to question, like, I don't want to just say what's the point, but because you got to try, but that's almost where I'm at with this anyway. So for me, I'm just going to keep going back to it. I would rather just have Justin Fields be the quarterback for 25. I know his contract will also be for 26, and maybe you throw that dart in 26. I like Stafford, but I'm almost just like out on the idea of this like aging veteran quarterback just because we're at the back of that end of the window, if you will.
I think I'm a little more interested in this idea, like, just because I don't think there's a better way forward this year. And I know the Steelers aren't going to try to lose. And like, I'm also not like particularly thinking that like Justin Fields is going to prove himself to be like the franchise quarterback that everyone's been waiting for. Like, I just think that's unrealistic at this point.
I would also bet against that.
So like, who has the best chance of giving them the best quarterback play this season of all the guys that we've talked about? It's definitely Stafford.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, what is that worth? I think that's the real question. It's like, what is the difference between paying Justin Fields $17 million and trading for Matt Stafford and paying him 30, 35 maybe? What is that difference worth? And I don't really know. Like, it would definitely make them better. I'm also not sure. Like the other part of the Matt Stafford thing that I feel like needs to be brought up is how good is Matt Stafford right now versus he just plays for Sean McVay. Like, I think that's the part of the risk. How good is Matt?
And how good is he in the weather elements that he would see a lot in the AFC North? Like, look at the way that he played in that playoff game for the majority of it. Like, really struggled in Philly. And he's obviously not dealing with that in LA. He was playing in a dome in Detroit for most of his career. Like, is there some question there in terms of how does he hold up in that type
of
weather?
I didn't even think about that. But yeah, I mean, sure. And like, I just think that, that's an elite passing environment. We talked about this when the Steelers were trading for Ayuk. I have serious questions about taking guys from those offenses, plugging them into other offenses, being like, it's going to be the same. Like, probably not. Like, I don't think, like, I would not think that you're going to do just as well playing for Arthur Smith as you are playing for Sean McVay. Like, I just would not. Now, how big of a difference is going to be? I don't know.
Great segue, bringing up Arthur Smith there. I want
I
to
got
dive
you.
in
I got you.
to to Jerry Dulac reporting here of Arthur Smith and Russell Wilson. This actually, there was some conversation a while back when the season ended, or maybe even in season, regarding them maybe not having the best working relationship, different philosophies. Obviously, I mean, Arthur Smith has a pretty tough job in terms of building an offense around this version of Russell Wilson. Fully get that. Also, the weapons that they have at their disposal and everything like that. Just it's a weird fit, and we can dive into that more. But just on the surface, what was put out there about this, kind of changing up the way that the offense was running after having their best offensive output. That game against Cincinnati where they score 44, and then you see the offensive production really start to dip. And then obviously finishing out the season with Cincinnati coming here in a game where they admittedly completely strapped everything offensively that worked in that first matchup. So what's your take on all of this? I saw you going back and forth with a lot of people on Twitter, not necessarily just about this specifically, but just like the Steelers offensive philosophy and wanting to run football in general, whether they are behind the times or they just don't have the personnel to be with the times, and just all of this. Really, where are you at?
Yeah, I mean, I think like we talked about the game plan against the Bengals when Mike Tomlin kind of basically admitted that he changed the game plan and how like that didn't work, obviously. And I don't think it was the right approach. But also I think like people mistake Mike Tomlin from making that choice for something that it's not. Like, it doesn't mean the Steelers are just like, oh, we want to run the ball no matter what. Like, there were lots of reasons to think that the Steelers' passing offense was not going to be as good if they tried that again. Russ had not played well in the games in between. George Pickens got hurt and came back and was not playing that well since he came back from the injury. Like, Russ had turned the ball over a bunch. It was cold. Like, there were reasons to think that wasn't going to work. There's reasons to be suspicious of the Steelers' passing offense in general. Like, I think the idea that, like, running bad, passing good that like some fans have is just very misguided. Like the Eagles are here. They run the ball more than anybody. The Lions, the 49ers, like there are plenty of the Ravens. There are plenty of run-heavy teams. Even look at how much better the Bills got when they started running more. Like,
I mean, the Commanders also towards the top in terms of rush attempts. Obviously,
right, yeah.
Jaden with the QB runs is going to play into that too. But yeah,
there's this idea that like, oh, if you can't run the ball and have success in the NFL. I would say it's the opposite. I would say it's a very rare team that doesn't run the ball and have success in the NFL. In fact, the only team really doing it right now is the team with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, there's lots of passing teams out there, really good passing teams that don't have good. Look at the Bengals. Like they threw the ball a million times. Like I think the running game. I think people have this idea that like running football is the 80s and 90s and passing offense is modern. And I think they've missed the fact that the NFL has gone back the other way and that most of the best offenses in the NFL right now are running offenses. And that is actually the most modern / advanced thing to do. Like, especially with the quarterback runs and the RPO stuff. Like, I think that's the pinnacle right now is the things the Eagles are doing, the things the 49ers are doing. I mean, look, the Rams have a really good passing offense, and they had a good year, but they don't run the ball. Like, I don't know. I just think certainly you can do it either way. And I think that's, like, the thing that people just get, like, Mike Tomlin isn't making that decision because he, like, loves the run, feels like the Steelers must run, and just wants to break his team when it's passing. Like, Mike Tomlin was here when they had Ben Roethlisberger, and they threw the ball more than anybody else. Literally, they led the league in passing attempts multiple times. Like, he's fine with that approach too. It's not some sort of like philosophical idea that's holding the Steelers back. I mean, that was a coaching decision that turned out not to work. But like, it's not because they have like the wrong idea about the way to approach the game or something like that.
So as it pertains to just this with Dulatch reporting of the relationship between Artie and Russ, and maybe button heads in terms of the path forward offensively after that game and stuff like that. I mean, I have every reason to believe that Jerry is spot on with his reporting here, but I question then why Artie Smith is going to be back, why Russell Wilson would want to be back, and why the Steelers would want Russell Wilson back if that's the case.
I'm not sure that the Steelers do. I mean, I think every sense that I've gotten is that they would prefer to have Justin Fields back. And I think there's strong feelings about that. Now, they're not going to say that because they still have to negotiate a contract with them, and they want to have a plan B, and they don't want to alienate that plan B. So I understand it from the Steelers' perspective. Not Russ. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't a big deal to him. Maybe he feels like no matter what, the Steelers are the best shot he has to play quarterback for a awful football team, because he probably doesn't have too many of those. I don't know, but I'm not sure. Like, I do not think that the Steelers would prefer to have Russell Wilson back as things stand right now. I have thought that, and nothing I read today changed that.
Yeah, not as like a plan A, but I guess I meant like even keeping that door open if they felt like they couldn't go forward with him, last year to the same degree, if they were that worried about. But I guess it didn't all have to do with Russ. It's just about the offense in totality that they, felt like they had to be super conservative with. But I this kind of brings me to a question that we got a while back, and I don't know if we ever addressed it. Maybe we did, but things run together sometimes in this mind of mine. Somebody had asked the question if we thought that the Steelers slide at the end of the year was so much about the Steelers themselves or a product of the teams that they were playing. So to you, did the Steelers in fact do the right thing by shifting I'm not saying completely shifting, they always wanted to be a running football team first and foremost, but this change that we're talking about here, or did they overreact to it just going on a little bit of a losing streak due to the level of competition?
Yeah, I think that overreact is a good way to put it. I think there's a lot of reasons to think that the passing game might not work as well the second time around, and I think they kind of overreacted to those things. But it doesn't mean those things weren't true also. And also in that game, when they did throw the ball, they did not throw the ball very well either. Like, they were averaging more yards per carry than yards per attempt through at least halftime. So, I doubt it really mattered either. I guess it's kind of the other part of that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that we ever addressed that, but that just kind of popped in my mind because that's kind of the way that I was thinking too. Was like, not to say that I feel like the Steelers could have ever had a shot at being some prolific offense, whether it be on the ground or through the air. The one thing that I will say is I thought maybe they would be a little bit more successful on the ground the second half of this year just because of playing so many young guys. And I thought that the second half of the season, we would see them really start to hit a stride, but it didn't go that way. Like Dan Moore, who had played very well in the first half of the season, he took a step back. Broderick played better in the second half, especially from a pass protection perspective, but I don't think that you saw it all come together cohesively the way that I thought it would in terms of the run game in the second half of the season.
No, they never got better at running the ball. They never adjusted the scheme to their personnel. They also never adjusted their personnel to what worked and what didn't work. Like, they didn't ever call plays for Najee Harris, but they kept playing Najee Harris over Jaylen Warren. Those were mistakes. They never the offense. I think as you saw, Broderick Jones play a little bit better in the second half of the year. I thought Dan Moore tried to step back. I thought the two interior rookies kind of slowed down as the year went on. I don't want to say rookie wall necessarily, but I think if you add up all of their worst games, they all come in that stretch, right? So it's a lot of it. It's condensed time frames. It's the level of competition. It's the weather. Everything. And so I think all that, they have to have a better offensive line than they got this year in order to be anything on offense. They don't have. I mean, somebody asked me, the idea that the Steelers should be passing more. I'm like, passing more with 37-year-old Russell Wilson, Dan Moore at left tackle, and Van Jefferson as wide receiver too. What are we doing? You can't. That's
Right.
not going to work. That's not going to work. You got to have better talent. Now they tried. They played all year without Troy Fautanu. They need those draft picks to hit. They need those guys to be better. I think they will. Offensive linemen take a long time to develop. It is the longest. Them and D line, like those guys take the longest to develop. That's why when you're starting to rebuild, that's where you start because you're going to have those guys for 10 or 15 years. They have long careers, but it takes them a while to get going. Rookie offensive linemen stink almost always. If you get a rookie offensive lineman that doesn't stink, you got a pretty good one. I think the Steelers got a couple pretty good ones, but they still had like their moments, right? And Broderick, I don't think he's lived up to that draft pick yet, but I'm not giving up on him or anything. But like they need that pick to hit. They need to see Trey Fautano on the field. Because until they get that offensive line together, okay, I think Arthur Smith being inflexible is a real valid criticism. But also, we know that like what he wants to do can work if they have enough talent to do it. And I don't think they have enough talent on the offensive line to do it. And they don't have enough talent at receiver to really scare anybody that they might do something else. So I've said this before here. The Steelers finished 16th in offense. They did not underachieve. They probably overachieved. Like,
I guess the question in terms of the amount of talent on that side of the football, like you obviously still can't ignore the holes that they have on defense as well, defensive line, cornerback. But when you just look at what they have to address offensively, do you think like one offseason free agency and draft included is enough to give them enough as we sit here right now?
No.
And I'm not talking quarterback. I'm pretty much talking about the surrounding pieces besides quarterback to be able to have the right quarterback in place at some point.
I think that's the best case scenario is that you could address everything else this offseason and just be a quarterback away.
Yeah. Okay. The last thing I want to do is touch on some of the conversation that you mentioned to me that you had yesterday with whether, former Steelers or guys with local ties, and just curious what came, if anything, from those conversations that you feel like was compelling stuff.
Yeah, first of all, Super Bowl Media Night is basically advertised as a circus. It is like literally amateur hour. There's like people dressed up in costumes and like random, like the guy from Jimmy Kimmel and Jameis Winston and like whatever. Like it's basically a mess on purpose, kind of. But I was able to do some real football reporting, which was fun, and caught up with Kenny Pickett with that story's on the site already. I thought that was, not to like pat myself on the back, but I thought that was the most interesting thing he said about playing for the Steelers, that he said he wishes some things had gone differently at the end. And I think that's appropriate because I wrote and I've been covering Kenny a long time. I thought it was a good pick when the Steelers made it. I admitted that he had, not necessarily the world's highest upside. I wasn't expecting things to go the way they were. But like, he's this lightning rod for the fan base where like everybody either like hates the guy or like, says the Steelers screwed him up. And it's like, all of it is true. Like Kenny Pickett owns responsibility for what happened during his time in Pittsburgh. And also the Steelers did not put him in anywhere near the best possible situation to succeed. And also, they probably should have picked Malik Willis anyway because he is living proof that, like, even if you think a draft pick is safe, it really isn't, and you should just go for the talent. So, like, it's all true, and I think like arguing over which is truer is kind of pointless, but that seems to be all anybody ever wants to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Just his inclusion in this episode, I'm sure, will stir some conversation within the comments. But yeah, absolutely, go read that article if you haven't yet on the site. Aside from Kenny, anything else with those conversations?
Yeah, talked to Juju a little bit. Talked to Justin Watson and Sky Moore, both Pittsburgh natives, about why the Chiefs are so good, basically, and not just Patrick Mahomes, but about the kind of like Juju could have gone anywhere, and he went back there. And so I thought it was interesting just to hear him say like, why he wanted to go back to Kansas City, what he likes about playing for Andy Reid and the organization, the fit. And Justin Watson, Pittsburgh native, could get his 4th Super Bowl ring, which is just wild for he's certainly a better athlete than I am, but like, Justin Watson's like the number 6 wide receiver. He's about to get his 4th Super Bowl ring. That's crazy. And about why they've been able to stay together for so long. what's made this dynasty what it is, and also talked to both Justin and Sky about going back to Pittsburgh and if they win 3 Super Bowls, if that would do they think that is more impressive than winning 4 in 6 years? So I got them talking about that. I think that's good stuff. So look for that on the site. I'm not sure tomorrow or Thursday probably will write that, but that's an interesting conversation. I think I'm not sure that people in Pittsburgh are ready for it.
Man, like that 22 draft class of theirs. I'm not saying it's like the Saints 2017 draft class is the one everybody always talks about, but like when you get Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis, like Brian Cook contributes as a safety, Leo Chenal was in that class, Jalen Watson, who's one of their starting corners. They got so many contributions from those guys, and they have now multiple draft classes that they've never not won a Super Bowl. Like when you're going
Pacheco was in that.
Pacheco was in that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. So just ridiculous the contributions that they've gotten from that draft. And this is what we're talking about with the Steelers drafting. They get a draft class, something that looks like that, those types of contributions. Now we're really cooking.
Yeah. I mean, look, and they did exactly what we're talking about when they found Mahomes, like where they built the team and then they added the quarterback. And then they continued drafting well after they did it, and they never had to bottom out to do it. Like, this is absolutely the blueprint for how you want to build a winning organization in terms of put the pieces together, take your shot to go get a quarterback. You never have to be bad to do it, and how to sustain it after you get good.
Seem to be also pretty good. Not that this necessarily relates to the Steelers, but in some way does when you look at when they move on from players. Seem to have a knack for when to know when to move on from a guy too. L'Jarius Sneed, most recent example of one. Like had that knee thing pop up. They're like, we're not paying him, tag and trade him, end up getting a third back, and things didn't go so well in Tennessee for him. But he was really good for Kansas City. They maximized the years that they had him and moved on seemingly at the right time. But anyways, anything else, Alan?
I mean, lots going on, but I think that's good for today, man.
Yep, we will dive back into the conversation tomorrow. But until then, tell the people they can find you.
At @Saunders_PGH on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. PGH Steelers Now is the site's account, SteelersNow.com. Go there, read the words so I can get paid. Also, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications here on the YouTube platform. Smitty, we're getting awfully close to that 15,000.
Yeah, what's it at now? Artie Burns.
Oh, I was going Fred McAfee, the little special teamer there. Fred McAfee away. We only have 2 subscribers since yesterday. I feel like we're falling off. We got to do better than that.
I was gonna say, I remember, mine was Jonathan Dwyer yesterday, so that doesn't seem too good that we went just from Jonathan Dwyer to Artie Burns. But
step it up, people. Step it up.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I want to be in the single digits naming players here. But keep the comments coming, keep the questions coming, all that good stuff. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. If you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast from, you can find us there. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Then you'll find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon
Ryan
Drive.
Clark. How do we forget Ryan Clark?